watercolor, probably the one of the most challenging of all medias. And today I'm going to be painting one of my whimsical children illustrations of a little fairy and her butterfly. Just something cute today to paint, and I want to share it with you, so let's get started in it. Here I'm starting out in Photoshop, where I do most of my sketches and composites. I'm pulling in a little butterfly here. And you notice I'm just going to lighten the opacity of it and then just get a basic sketch or an outline of the butterfly. This is the same way that I created the little fairy girl, and the flowers I just kind of sketched in. I'm using a XP pen graphics tablet, which I absolutely love. So now that I've placed my butterfly, I'm going to reduce the opacity of the entire sketch down to something like 10-15%, and then I'm going to print it out on watercolor paper. And here you can see my sketch on the watercolor paper. The watercolor paper and paints that I use will be in the description below. I'm taping it down primarily just to kind of keep it in place. I don't really have to worry about the water or the paint causing the paper to buckle. It's an illustration, so I'm not using a lot of water with it. You see I'm actually testing my watercolor on a piece of the paper before I apply it to the actual painting. I'm outlining in the same colors I'm going to be doing the wings instead of using black. I think black is a little bit of a bold outline, and I like to just do my line work, my basic line work, in the same color but just a different value. This is a technique that I was taught by one of the Disney artists. I'm using a wicker brush. I find that it holds a lot of paint, so I can paint a long line without it running out of paint in it, and I can get a very fine detail with it. Here again I'm testing the paint before I put it on the paper. Now if I go over top of the lines below that I've just painted and they're dry, then it's going to just make a different value and it'll be fine. It's not going to do anything about messing up the other lines. Here I've added a lot of water to it. I'm wanting to get this area very wet because I'm going to be dabbing in some paint to add a little bit of a texture. Here again I'm getting it really wet in this area. And see, now I'm just dabbing in some to give it a little bit of an effect. Please keep in mind that this is actually 4 times the normal speed. So this actually took me about 2 hours to complete this painting. And I've reduced it down to about 30 minutes. You notice that brush really does a great job. You can run a line a long ways before it starts running out of paint. Pretty much the entire painting is done with just two brushes. This one here, this is a wicker brush, and here I'm mixing up some more colors and testing them on a piece of paper again. You see, I'm trying to make the wings very translucent, leaving areas where I'm showing a lot of the white paper showing through. And when I finally get toward the end of this, I will start shadowing things in. Adding some shadows and some more line work, a little bit of highlights. In watercolor, you always want to know that wherever the water ends is where the paint pretty much ends. It won't, if you wet an area and then you put paint in it, the paint won't go beyond the wet edge. There I'm pretty much just painting in the underpainting, I call it. And I use a paper towel to bring out highlights again. That's kind of a neat trick that you want to try sometime. If you get too much paint on it before it dries, you can dab it back out. You can't get 100% out, but you can get a lot of it back out. And leaving a very soft and subtle color then. Almost a stain to the paper. And now I'm adding some shadows in. If I put too much, you pull it back out again. So always kind of keep a paper towel rolled up in my left hand. There I was just testing to see how dry the paint was. I'm wearing a glove, if you notice there, that basically not to keep from smearing. I mean, if the paint's wet, it'll still smear, so you have to be careful about that. But this just keeps the oils of my hand off the paper. And also makes it easier to move your hand over the paper. And I use the same glove when I'm doing digital work on the tablet too. I find that my hand doesn't basically stick, it glides across the surface easier. Yeah, I'm just bringing in some highlights from the hair. We need these long strands of hair. And I've just about finished her hair. I find that the hair takes actually the longest of any kind of a painting where you have a subject in it. Getting the hair right is just very time consuming. Now my light source is coming in this painting. It's coming from the upper right hand corner. You always want to have to define your light source, where it's going to be coming from, and then apply shadows and highlights accordingly. now that my paint has dried in the wings, I can go back and add some little veins in. I'm going to start working into her outfit. There again, I'm getting that highlight in again with a paper towel. And if also I don't want to avoid getting a hard edge of the paint, I'll dab it with a paper towel and then go back with just a light wet brush and blend it. Get some of that soft blending. Her little purple outfit. I'll add some purple flowers too to kind of complement things. Now I can't immediately go in and start painting her arm until that's completely dry. Her dress is completely dry around it. If not, the paint will just blend together and mix along the edge, and something I don't want to avoid. It's a good time to remind you that if this is your first time watching my videos, please click on like and subscribe. It really helps me out. That helps getting my channel viewed more, and also get you notified if when there's new videos gets posted. Doesn't cost you anything, just click on it. If you're enjoying this video, click on a like there and a little thumbs up. Also, if you leave comments below or have any questions, I would definitely try to get back to you on them. And right now I'm striving to try to do a new video once a week. Well, that's my goals anyway. I apologize, I should have had the camera down a little bit lower here. I get wrapped up in doing my paintings and forget to check the camera. I hope to get better at that. As you notice again, I'm starting to do the skin tones. Now you may ask what colors do I use for my skin tones. This is a mixture of a little bit of a brown, some yellow, and some pink, or even a light red. So as you notice there, it's just a little bit lighter than the browns that I'm using, because it has some pink and yellow in it. And here I'm just going to fill in the area around her knee, and then I'm dabbing it back out. Hey, I remembered to move the camera. Cool. I'm putting some shadowing in. Now all I'm doing to change the values here is just adding a little bit more pigment and a little less water. Again, always testing it on my little test strip to make sure it's right before I put it on the paper, because sometimes if you put it on the paper, it's going to be difficult to take off. Again, that wonderful wicker brush that I use. Get some really smooth lines with it. And a little bit of red on her lips. And now I'm going to use a pen that is not water soluble. So I'm using a pen to do around their eyes there. What about when I started in watercolor? I started in watercolor during the pandemic, when I was looking for some stuff to create and just really kind of got into it at that time. Like everybody, I thought, boy, if I got me some watercolor set and that they're cheap, I could just paint some paintings with it, not really realizing again of the learning curve for painting with watercolor. I don't want to discourage anybody. I mean, I was able to learn how to do it, and I hope you will try it yourself. Now I primarily paint in acrylic on canvas or watercolor. I'm using the Winsor watercolor paper here. It's a cold pressed rough paper. I find that it really takes the paint well and it has really good contrast to it. And I'm using Winsor Cotman watercolor paints too. This particular painting I'm only using about 3 colors or 4 colors out of the palette. Again, I'm just filling in now to get in some shadowing areas. Also find that when I'm finished with the painting, I scan them on my Epson scanner. That way I have them digital format, and then I print prints on a heavyweight archival paper from Red River. I'll be covering that in a future video more about the papers that I choose. So now I'm on the butterfly, the fun part of it. Adding a little bit of colors here. Yellow and some reds and oranges. I'm just blocking in the colors. Now there's a little wet, so again I had to be careful that I'm not coming up against wet paint or it'll bleed over into it, as it did right there. So now I'm going to dry it off so that I continue to paint black in there and it doesn't bleed into the colors. So I'm going to touch up the edges with my pen again. As I pointed out at the beginning of the video, I do a lot of my sketching work, well, I mean basically do all my sketching work in Photoshop. It's much easier to fix things. I can test with colors. I can composite things together. I can move things around. It's just a whole lot easier than actually putting a pencil to do your sketch on the paper. And you can get a graphics tablet as low as about $35. It sure is a lot easier than trying to draw with a mouse, which I call it like painting with a brick. So now I'm putting a little bit of the veins in the butterfly's wings. This is a 0.1 size pen. Again, I'll put the equipment list or the material list and stuff that I use in the description below. If you ever come up with something that you want me to do a video on, drop it in the description. Here I'm actually using the pen just to pull out a little bit of definition of an edge. In Disney well, they're animated movies and some of the older Disney, they always use black to do the edge work. But I go between them. Here I'm working on her headband a little bit, picking out the colors that I used in the butterfly. So kind of gives some connection between my fairy and the butterfly. Who asked me, where do you come up with your ideas? Well, that's everywhere. My answer is everywhere. I watch YouTubes, people, I watch artists that are far, far better than I am. I get inspiration from them. I have accumulated a large library of art books, now exceeding 100 books, and I'll pull a book off the shelf and get inspired by that. I go to Pinterest. That's really good to get ideas and, things you want to try. And I use AI. I use Midjourney also to create some ideas or concepts, and then I may incorporate those into a painting. So I don't really limit myself. I'm not really great at imagining things. I'm getting better at that. I usually have gone from something I've seen in the past that I liked, or maybe bits and pieces of something that I've seen in the past. So here I'm darkening in the shadow areas again. I named this the fairy and the butterfly. I'm not sure I wouldn't have been better to call it wings. Again, getting an idea of my color palette. I never really wash out my mixing area because I find that I go back and use those colors again later. As long as I can find a little spot to mix up something new, that's fine. I may take a paper towel and just dab out a little clean spot. If you notice in the top of the color palette there, I cut out the lids from each one of the little color blocks there. When you peel them off, I save those and then I tape them all onto that paper on the top of the watercolor set, so I can see which colors. It's hard to tell what colors is what colors when they all look dark and the same thing. It's hard to tell the brown and the black, or the red and the orange, when it's in your little trays. Now somebody may be able to say, hey, this doesn't look like a particular flower. I don't know that I'm going from any particular flower. I'm just painting in things that look like flowers. Here I've switched brushes to a round brush. It's a little thicker so I can make easier lines. If you notice that if I push down harder, It may spread the line out wider and makes a petal for the flower. And this is all the same color green. I'm just adding more paint in some areas and less in others, and that's where you get the different values. And I'm dabbing in some colors around here. And now I'll go in and finally do some foreground painting, a little bit of shading around her dress area here that'll be darker, being blocked by the light. And just some final little touch-ups on it here. A little bit of veins in there. And we're just about ready to wrap this one up, I think. If you're interested, then you can obtain a 9x12 print of this for $25 and free shipping on my website. That should be available very soon. I'm sprinkling a little bit of pollen in the air here, little pollen drops, kind of fill the area in, and finally I'm going to sign it. And if you want a free print every month of my artwork, then be sure to check out my Patreon site. That link also will be in the description below. Right now, as a new member, you'll get a 9x12 print at the $10 level, so per month. That's a signed limited edition print. This is that pilot pen that I've been using. If you get ready to use a pen, I always draw some lines on a paper, and then take some water and paint over top of it to make sure it doesn't bleed, to make sure that it's not water soluble. And just a few little touch-ups there. Dark shadowed area, and signing my print or painting. And reveal, taking the tape off, and see what it's going to look like in a matte. Take a look at it in the matte. There it is. The final reveal. Thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.